everybody to this Mayoral Forum in extraordinary circumstances and times, and I think this is probably the first virtual Mayoral Forum that we have had. And as I said, if you can be patient as we work our way through the Zoom environment. So if you want to say something, right down the bottom of your screen, there's a text that says raise your hand. If you do that, then I think there's an icon comes up, and I can then identify that, and someone obviously can have a dual watch as well. The CEs or the CEOs have been briefed on the proposed order of these presentations so that we can make the best use of our time. There are no apologies in terms of the meeting. There are no late items. Tauranga has got their suite of projects in before we started this meeting, so that's why there's no late items. So the purpose of today's meeting is to essentially hear from each member of the proposed Crayon infrastructure projects that you have put forward today, and I understand they've got to be in by the 14th. So as we move through the meeting, in your virtual agenda, you'll see there are some recommendations on page 9 of the agenda, and we will consider those at the conclusion after each mayor has spoken. So the order of the presentations, the Bay Plenty Regional Council or myself will go first, followed by Taupo, Western Bay, Eastern Bay Plenty. So you between Judy, Lynn and Malcolm, I hope you've sorted out the order there, that's fine. Then Stevie, Rotorua Lakes, and 10B, Tauranga City Council. So just some opening comments. As I said, this is absolutely unusual times, and our region, as well as other regions, are facing significant new challenges as a result of this lockdown and the COVID-19 pandemic. Primary industries and primary manufacturing are probably not going to be significantly disrupted in terms of day-to-day operation, as they operate as essential services. International demand in terms of some of these commodities is likely to return to some normality in terms of levels as countries come out of the lockdown. However, having said that, those of you who've had the opportunity, or probably don't have the opportunity, but who would like to look up the latest Rabobank statement in terms of the effect on primary industries as a result of international demand, there's some interesting reading there in terms of the expected decline in terms of consumables, especially the fast food sector. So anyway, that industry, they're still going to experience and will continue to encounter some logistical challenges in terms of labour shortages. There will be some labour shortages through the product supply chain, growth in construction and rental, hiring, real estate, food service, exactly. Food service are likely to slow down due to the a virtual halt in immigration, which is the key driver for some of the GDP in our economy, and that's as a result of the continued border restriction, which I think are most likely to occur even as we go out of level 4 to level 3 and then hopefully level 2. The impact on the construction sector may be mitigated by this intervention in terms of the Crayon infrastructure call for projects. Clearly, owner-occupied property, retail, accommodation, food service, etc., are likely to be severely impacted by the halt in foreign tourism due to border restrictions, lower domestic demand, etc. With regards to potential impact, and specifically in the Bay of Plenty here in the sub-regions, Rotorua and Taupo especially, together with Tauranga, will face significant impact due to the severe halt in terms of overseas tourism. So that affects the accommodation, it affects the retail, food service, beverage, and I think it's fair to say domestic tourism, whilst it may offer some recourse, is likely to be slow to recover and will not meet the same levels of what the international demand was in those particular areas. So for those areas in our region, high growth, particularly in Tauranga, Western Bay, Rotorua, they have been behind significant growth in construction and rental hiring, real estate, retail, trade. So with no immigration driving that population growth due to the closed borders and increased economic uncertainty, activity in these industries is likely to decline significantly. Now, having said that, there will be Kiwis returning from offshore. They will mitigate that to some degree, but certainly not to the degree that we have been experiencing those levels of growth. So, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council response. The challenges of COVID-19, both today and in the time to come, are going to be of an unprecedented scale. So by meeting these challenges as a region, I think we can be best placed to help our economy and communities to recover. They give us the opportunity to consider where as a region we're likely to be headed, what our future looks like, and the role of everyone in participating to try and mitigate those negative effects to the degree that we can. So significant work is already underway in our region, planning for this economic and social recovery, both in the short, the medium, and the long term. But we know to be successful, we are going to require a unified approach, both sub-regionally, regionally, and nationally. And we also have to bring into that equation the participation of the Māori or our iwi partners, industry, as well as community groups. So the Regional Council we consider is well positioned to assist with the regional role to support recovery. Can't do it ourselves, but hopefully we can do it in partnership with our territorial authority partners. And what we'd like to do in our own case is invest in key projects to stimulate the economy and hopefully that economic recovery. So, as you know, our core focus is caretakers for the environment, and we're committed to our communities, recognising the role that we play as a critical one, both in supporting and protecting communities and the environment in which all those communities live. So our first cut is there are four main mechanisms that the Regional Council is progressing to support communities to recover from COVID-19. First is through Bay of Connections. Bay of Connections is not new to everybody. It's been through a service delivery change in recent times, but it's an independent leadership group consisting of Māori and business leaders from across the region. I think it's going to be well placed to support this regional effort. It's got existing networks across the regions. It interacts closely with EDAs, with councils, with industry, Māori organisations and others, as well as critical networks into central government agencies. So both those representatives are located in the Bay of Plenty, and what I'm referring to there is the position that Ezra fills in terms of the interaction with those central government agencies and with Wellington. So then we have the Crayon infrastructure projects. So the Regional Council will be submitting 3 proposals related to flood infrastructure, which we consider are shovel-ready projects. So the first one, for those in the Eastern Bay of Plenty here, this is not news to you, but the Rangataiki Floodway project. If we're able to get this funded, it will complete a capital works improvements for the Rangataiki Tarawera Flood Protection Scheme. Our estimate is it will employ something over 50 people, but the cost of that is over $13 million. As you know, following the Edgecombe floods, the Cullen Review, and back in 2017, focused strongly on the completion of this project to safeguard both the local and the regional economy, because this is not just about people and houses, this is about infrastructure that services much wider area of Bay of Plenty. And at the time, Michael Cullen said this was a project that had urgency and should be completed as soon as possible. So that one is the first one. We have other flood protection resilience projects across all 4 Bay of Plenty river schemes. The first one is the new Nongatahaha flood protection works following the April flood event there. That's been ongoing for some time now, but we're now getting into the position where we need to put some people and machinery into that flood protection scheme to protect those communities at Nongataha. We've also got flood development work on the Whakatane River and the Wastewater River. So this also includes supporting the Aportiki and the Whakatane PGF projects, in particular to Whakatane there. That's some rehabilitation or rebuild regarding the now funded PGF harbour development there, or the safe harbour adjacent to the landing road bridge. And the other one is terms of supporting the Aportiki community in terms of the PGF funding for the harbour entrance there, which requires some work being done on the Waioeka river stop banks. So those 2 projects, or those 3 projects there, 2 projects so there would include over 60 FTEs is our estimate, at a cost of about $12 million. The third project we're putting forward is progressing a step change shift in the current environmental performance of the Bay of Plenty scheme drain network. So this for Aportiki, Whakatane and the Kaituna area is very important. So our proposal here is to upgrade the drainage network to a best practice standard, which is above and beyond the current drainage maintenance levels of service. This project is currently limited by the scale and cost of works that would be required to achieve the significant environmental performance and community benefit that would flow from it. So we're proposing a cost share partnership with the Crayon Infrastructure Fund, where we could consider a 1/3 of the total cost being contributed to by council. That's the regional council. Having said that, this has not been to council, been approved by council, so they'd have to go through that process. It also is expected that landowners and/or industry would also make up a contribution, and that contribution may well be in kind, or it could be cash. Again, in our estimate, this is a $21 million project, and the employment opportunities falling out of this would be something to the order of 9,000 hours of earthworks machine operator time to reform drains and drain batters, 6,000 hours of fencing labour. We just got to find the fences. And 9,000 hours in terms of native planting, and the labour would require nearly 2 million native plants, and then you would also have to have some stimulus in terms of the nurseries that are going to do that. Another one is what we refer to as the Green Works project. So it would deliver employment in the region alongside substantial environmental benefits. So when we say Green Works, what we're referring to is projects including pest control, biodiversity enhancement, environmental infrastructure such as wetland pest control. Could we all be the Kaimai Mamaku extension in terms of what the pest control we're doing up there? So approximately 30 of these projects are in the conceptual or development stage, and they could run up to about $5 million per project. So further work will scope out potential partnerships in terms of, because we think iwi is a critical partner in terms of these, as well as community groups. And essentially we're meaning volunteers in terms of these. And the last one is regional transport projects. There is going to be a number of transport projects proposed through the CIP process to ensure that they can be fully considered by the government through the Regional Transport Committee on the 6th of May. I'm told is the meeting of that Regional Transport Committee. And that would, if these projects are to get picked up, would require an alteration to the Regional Land Transport Plan. Following on from that, there's also a large range of potential public transport projects. These could include park and ride facilities, transport hubs, double tracking of the rail line in some locations, but these projects will be considered at the Public Transport Committee later this year. So that's the wind up from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. What I'd propose to do is take questions at the conclusion of this. And I see that Lynn Restra's got a hand up as well as Stevie. So we'll take Lynn first.
Thanks, Doug. I was quite interested in knowing, do you anticipate that the projects, especially around the flood resilience and so on, that they could all occur at the same time? You were thinking that if we're trying to, not just one after the other, as you would normally do in your calendar of projects, but you would anticipate that all of these could be undertaken at the same time, you know, having people employed on each of them? That's my first question.
Right. The answer to that question is it's a matter of scale and it's a matter of capability. So the Rangataiki Tarawera Floodway project is a big project, in excess of $13 million. The provider capability sitting around that project is substantial and it'd have to go out to contract. It's not the small provider who could do, for instance, the improvements to the Waiweka River floodway in the Portaki, by example. So it's have to be measured by scale and by capability and complexity of the project. So I think there's a blend there that some smaller operators could do the small ones, but sure, the big ones would have to be the big infrastructure providers.
And my second question following on from that, Doug, is do you anticipate that there'll be the opportunity for people who are unemployed presently for each of those projects in their own areas to undertake work on them?
Well, again, it's a technical specification. So if you're dealing with something like the Rangataiki, if you take something like the Rangataiki Tarawera floodway, that's a very technical thing. Is it going to employ someone who's been displaced from a motel cleaning job in town or a hotel? No, the answer is not. But I think with the suite of projects that we're going to have, that those people could fit into some of the lower order ones in terms of what are referred to as the green projects. So hopefully we're trying to, what is critical here is getting people out of their homes or off a benefit and getting them involved in the community. So that's why we're putting forward a suite of projects, but there will have to be prioritisation applied across all of these projects that we're proposing.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you.
Mayor Chadwick.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you for the overview too. That really shows the environmental protection focus of these projects. Of your shovel-ready projects, rather than the green ones that still seem to need a lot of work, is it the Rangataiki that's the one that you would put forward? And we really appreciate the flood protection work too here in Rotorua. And then the second part of the question is, when you're getting into the green projects, we'd be really interested in the use of geothermal for native plant nurseries and the food hub, the potential for that.
So let me deal with the first one, Stevie. Is that some of the technical projects like the Rangataiki floodway is very technical, very specialist,
Yep.
high engineering level of input, hence the cost. The Nongataha one that project is shovel ready, just needs some final sign off in terms of not the design, but the what do you call it when someone audits it. Something like the Nongataha floodway one, peer review.
Yep.
Someone like the Nongataha flood review can be done in-house by engineering. The institutional knowledge in terms of those minor level things can be kicked off straight away. And the second part of your question was what?
It was the green projects and the potential for the use of geothermal, especially for the food hub concept that you've got in there, and also for native plant nurseries.
Yes. Yeah. Now we can't we can't do a lot of these green projects in terms of the biodiversity stuff without heavy input from the nurseries, and I think if there may well be an opportunity here for the Crown Infrastructure Fund to actually get in behind and support some of those existing nurseries to up their capacity and capability, which to a large degree, you know, someone from being displaced from employment in Rotorua could do that quite capably. You know,
And
for instance,
Doug, there's also potential for new nurseries. We've had great interest shown there.
yes, there is.
Yeah.
But to get uplift in existing nurseries is a lot easier than starting a brand new one.
All right.
Okay, so that's all I've got there, and the next one is David Metrovirus and Topo.
Thanks, thanks very much, Doug, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your time today. Yeah, so we have 16 projects that we've nominated, circa about 320 million, approximately 2,200 jobs. Basically, just briefly, the water and wastewater projects. We've got a civic, admin, and welfare centre that's shovel. These are shovel ready. Event centre upgrade. Great Lakes Centre upgrade, sorry, which is our main activity conference building in town. Also an event centre for Turangi, which have got a very low socio-economic situation down there, and also their facilities are still 1950s, power project buildings, very, very out of date. Also sports grounds, upgraded sports grounds. So basically across the gambit, really. We have confirmed our PGF project, which was the airport rebuild, a new terminal and car park. They've confirmed, the government have confirmed as of last week that the PGF has still confirmed that funding, which is fantastic. So that's basically it, Doug. Happy to answer anything.
Okay, thank you, David. Any questions for David? Mayor Chadwick. Stevie, sorry. You'll have to put your mic on, Stevie.
And here, great to see you've got something about airports too. In view of Airways last week and their announcement, I think that's something as regional mayors we need to look at, especially with the impact on being part of an economic recovery. So we'd support you there.
Sure, thank you very much. As far as the talking to our local aviators, that airport, obviously the tower, what are they called? The air towers or whatever they're called. That's been on the cards for quite some time. So I think they've snuck in the opportunity there to make that decision a little bit earlier than normal, but you guys might know more than that.
Okay, thank you, David. So we'll move on to Mayor Webber.
Thanks, Doug, and good morning to the others. You've seen our list of 15 projects, total capital cost of about 436 million, and the majority of them are taken straight out of our long-term plan, either for the current, the upcoming year or the year thereafter. There's two projects in there though that you should be aware of. That's the Rangiuru Business Park, and that's in collaboration with Quayside. We put that in jointly. And there's another one, project number 6 on our table, which is public infrastructure to support development of Mayoral and Papakāinga housing, which is a little bit outside the box, but I think it's something that we're quite passionate about. If we can get Crown investment to enable that infrastructure to kickstart some housing around the Mayoral zones that we have, that's pretty significant to us. So apart from that, I've got nothing to add. We've circulated our story on our list, and I'm sure, being all diligent mayors, we've read it all.
Thanks very much, Gary. Any questions of Gary? Or Mayor Webber, I should say, sorry. If not, can we move on to the Eastern Bay of Plenty? So do we have an order of presentation here? Judy, Whakatane going first, or someone else?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So what we're doing is putting forward as a part of the wider Eastern Bay of Plenty suite, and our part of that totals $146 million. We see this as a great opportunity to take projects that are shovel ready, so that we can get some construction going, employment and economic activity revitalised. So our package includes 3 strategic areas. It is some urban regeneration projects, there's some 3 waters projects, and there's some transport and connectivity projects. Most of those have been signalled in our long-term plan or have been part of what was required or considered with the provincial growth fund. And so again, a lot of work has been done in that space. And we really are looking at providing some ratepayer relief, particularly with our twin setbacks of the Whakaari and now COVID. We've taken this collaborative approach with Eastern Bay of Plenty councils, the regional council and iwi, as we did with the provincial growth fund. So this is kind of more of the same for us, and we will be supporting some of the iwi applications to the Crown Infrastructure Fund, who have their own priorities. We do believe that this package represents projects that are economically, socially and environmentally sound, and that the benefits of these do extend past the boundaries of our own district as well, and that the package complements projects that have been PGF funded already. We've done a lot of work planning with the PGF application, so a lot of the work done on reports now has a double opportunity to support projects that we're putting forward for this. So we are ready to go. I want to thank, just take the time to thank Mayor Ristra, Mayor Campbell and CEO Fiona McTavish and their respective teams for the incredible efforts that they've put in, particularly over this Easter weekend, to ensure that our package from the Eastern Bay of Plenty was complete to the standard required. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. Any questions of Mayor Turner? If not, we'll move on to...
I think it's me.
Yes, Lynn. Mayor Ristra, welcome.
And I have to say that I wasn't the one doing the work over the Easter holidays. I've been most impressed with the staff's input on these the joint effort here. So if you see that the whole group of projects that have been put forward for the Eastern Bay of Plenty is a mix of old and new. And the one that I'd like to emphasise that we've got for us is the Hukataya network. What we're trying to do is reticulate the Woodlands Hukataya area of Opotiki, which is up higher, it opens up a lot of area for construction and development if we were to get the reticulation done. And what we had already hoped to bring that forward in our long-term plan, even though it signals quite a few jobs in itself, the actual potential from this whole project opens up, especially with Whakatoia iwi around some of their interests in that area too. That's the biggie for us, alongside all of the ones that we already have under the PG funding. I think that's all I really need to say. I'm really pleased with the opportunity to work this together. I think that's been, again, a successful way to move forward on this with the government. So thanks, everybody. I don't think I need to say anything else.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ristra. So I'll take questions on the Eastern Bay when we've completed with Mayor Campbell. Mayor Campbell. Mr. Campbell, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. And Doug, thank you for that report from regional, because it's quite comprehensive and has set up sort of a tone of where we're wanting to go in the next little while anyway. Thank you also to Judy and Lynn because it is important that the Eastern Bay work together on this. It was a success in the PGF funding, without a doubt, and I think that's going to be the same tone this time around. We've got 10 projects on our list, and it totals out to about 17.5 million. And it is a goodness gracious, I've gone lost the blooming thing. Technology. I'm actually amazing that I even realised that it was Tuesday this morning. So can I just say that a lot of this, as Lynn and Judy said, overarching what our PGF funding has gone for also. But there are some essential works that we want to get on with our wastewater and our water reticulation, and but it's all fairly small numbers, I will admit that, but nonetheless we're all part of the Eastern Bay of Plenty. So and I have to concur with the other two mayors. This has been a big project over the weekend for our team. Certainly I haven't had a lot to put into it. It's just answering questions from Russell and his team. So full marks to them. But yeah, I don't think there's a hell of a lot more to say, to be honest, Doug. Just we've got a huge task ahead of us, and I think the most important thing is keeping that positive view right across the Eastern Bay of Plenty and Bay of Plenty as a whole, because we've got to. I think there's going to be some people hurting out there. And I know this afternoon, we'll be meeting, my council and I are meeting regards rates, and that is a concern. So at this point in time, I think that's about us. It's a bit of a wrap. Thank you, Doug. Okay,
thank you, Mayor Campbell. Just a question from me, a generic question that covers all the three councils. I know that those walkways, cycleways, in terms of integration between the three entities, was high on your agenda. Just take note of Minister Jones the other day saying that in terms of consenting issues for some of these things, that if you require or there's a demand for acceleration, then we may have to look at a fast track or get Crown support for fast tracking some of these minor consenting issues to get these things cracking. But I thought that one was pretty well planned. You've been spending some time on it, over the last 5 years, haven't you?
Yes, we have. And I think just the little conversation we had with Minister Jones around some of the hold-up, it's not necessarily from within our own district or the regional council consenting. Often it's from organisations like DOC or the historic places, Heritage New Zealand, that are actually holding up a lot of our projects. So it was really good to be able to actually express that that they were the main delayers actually in quite a few of our projects.
And that's the point I was making, that if we can, as a regional council, can give you some support in terms of resolving those things, all you've got to do is yell out, because in these circumstances, we shouldn't have to accommodate the lowest common denominator in terms of ticking all the boxes. What's important here is getting people in jobs really quickly.
Thanks for that, Doug. Appreciate that.
Mayor Chadwick.
Thank you. And again, our staff have been working right through Easter on this, and I'd like to acknowledge them, Jeff, you and your team. But this is a finessed list today, and they support our Build Back Better strategy that we've got, building on the strengths of the region. And as you mentioned in your overview, Doug, the critical impact of tourism and forestry that we're experiencing and going to experience here more. So we've got three major projects that are really focused for us on the stimulus of infrastructure to enable our urban land development. They're no surprise. It's linked with Tino Road upgrade and stormwater and the Ngāti Whakāui tribal lands capability. The other is the Rotorua Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrade, and built into there is the growth, and also completing Rotoehu and Ngāmotu reticulation, and also the Rotorua Business Park development for the airport, which is well underway and ready. All of those are shovel ready and ready to go. We've taken out projects that are under 10 million in the Provincial Growth Fund. They've already gone to the PDU, so we didn't bring those forward here. And then there are 3 other projects that leverage tourism to put greater value into our tourism. And one's the Aquatic Centre, which is a geothermal regional asset, Rotorua Lakefront development, and Whakariwa Forest and Trail development. So that's to be ready for when tourism gets underway. Our figures are that 23% of our workforce is involved in tourism, and 59% of our tourism is domestic. So we want to be ready, recovery ready, and that's why our investments are focused on those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Chadwick. Just as a matter of interest, in terms of the numbers of people involved in essentially servicing international tourism, how many FTEs do you think that would mean in Rotorua's district?
Well, you've got to go on out of that spiral, Doug, because it's all the retail and the supply and hospo stuff. So that is, Jeff, you're there, that's in our CIP shovel ready stuff. The number of jobs, it's massive for us, especially with the 23%. We don't differentiate between the international and the domestic, because if one takes a hit, then the whole of the hospo sector goes, and that's
no,
what's happened now.
I was referring, just a matter of interest, to direct FTEs. So those are the people in hotels, servicing motels, that, as opposed to the indirect, which are the servicing ones. But there'd be a substantial number, wouldn't there?
Yeah, it's huge.
Okay. No, I've got no questions so far, and so shifts me to Mayor Powell.
Thank you very much, Chairman Leader, and good morning to those that I didn't say good morning to with the technology challenges I had at the beginning. Great to hear from everybody. So I just also, like everybody, wanted to thank Marty, CJ and the entire executive team who have slaved over this project most of the weekend too. Thank you to all of you. Also, thanks to the elected members for their energy and engagement over the weekend on reviewing these. We've got a council meeting in 45 minutes as it transpires to look at these and to potentially reprioritise what I'm about to talk about. But, you know, a lot of it is around regional cooperation. We've submitted ours under the wider heading of, excuse me, jobs and housing, which is going to be very, very important to us going forward. We've created some $1.1 billion across 24 projects, none of which are under $10 million, and the vast majority are well over $20 million. And I think really important to understand for Tauranga is that, you know, the construction industry here employs about 12% of our workforce, which is very, very significant. So naturally there is a focus on construction and housing. We have a housing crisis, as you know, anyway, and it's really just bringing forward a lot of what we have been talking about for some time, that which is already designated in the plans, both annual and long-term plan. So just nipping through the key ones, I won't take you through all 24 of them necessarily. I'm happy to do so, but I'm in the terms of time. What we call the Western Corridor, including the Tariko Business Estate in the urban growth area. This is around the creation of jobs and, of course, the housing, some 3,000 jobs and a similar amount of houses in Tariko West. The Te Papa Spatial Plan that we've talked about for some time now in terms of its redevelopment, the intensification of that area along the spine of Cameron Road. The Tauranga Eastern Corridor growth, which is Te Tumu, and the urban areas surrounding that particular piece of geography, including the development of the Waiariki Town Centre infrastructure, again, which has been talked about for a long time. In terms of the three waters, the Western Stormwater Growth Infrastructure, we've introduced that as a close to $20 million project. The Waiari Water Supply Scheme, which we've talked about for some time, at around $117 million. The Tamanga Wastewater, the outfall pipeline. And similarly, the bioreactor at Tamanga. The Memorial Park Recreation and Leisure Hub, which is a lot bigger than it sounds on the surface, so I'm just having some minor technology problems here, is around about $100 million and has the ability to employ around 350 people. It's something that, you know, we consider to be very important going ahead. Whether it ends up being a top priority or not right now remains to be seen, but I think we will be asking for it given the impact on the well-beings, the magnitude of the project, and of course the amount of employment that it creates. Western Corridor Community Facilities, a range of opportunities in there between sort of together, both residential and community facilities totaling around $100 million. So it goes. I won't take you through, in the essence of time, all the other detailed bits and pieces, but it really is the superset for us, understanding the government's need to work as a group of regional partners, which we agree with entirely, is all around ensuring that we under the superset of jobs and housing, that we introduce projects which are meaningful, both to the sub-region specifically and to the wider region, mostly in terms of logistics, transport and port operations, and freeing up the roads.
Thank you, Mayor Powell. So we've got a question from Mayor Restra.
And this probably goes to both, well, for all of us in the district, really, with the emphasis on construction and the realisation that a lot of the people who will have lost their jobs at the moment are not in construction. I'm seeing the need for a lot of retraining, possibly, but also a sharing of workforces. And I'm just wondering what your views on that would be, both Mayor Tembe and Mayor Stevie. It seems to me that somehow, to start with, we are going to have to share the parts of the workforce until we get the rest up to scratch, I suppose, and also retraining. How will we go about that?
So the question to Mayor Powell and Mayor Chadwick. Who wants to go first?
I can start. A good question, and it happened very quickly through our Economic Development Agency. If I cite the example, when Tapuia lost jobs, all of them were employed and went over to help with horticulture in the Western Bay, which was fantastic, and are going over in Tapuia vans to work. So that got them moving quite quickly. But I think it's those initiatives we need to think of very, very quickly. But I'd do that through our EDAs, because it's our EDA that's leading the recovery initiatives that we're leading here.
Thank you, Mayor Chadwick. Mayor Powell, want to add anything to it?
Yeah, thank you. Look, for us, and I think really for the country, the small and medium enterprises are the backbone of what we do here. 97% of all businesses are small, and in terms of the employment that they have had, they've employed 30% of all employed New Zealanders. Those figures are going to change dramatically. We know that Treasury is going to come out with some forecast unemployment figures, and if they are in double digits, as is being suggested, it could be 275,000 people out of work. So putting resources via the EDAs and with great support from Council, I agree with Stevie to a point, but I think that we have a role, certainly we do it in Tauranga here, to support the EDAs in ways which may be a bit more hands-on than normal, to invigorate and to stimulate our SME economy is going to be really very important indeed. The redeployment of people is certainly going to be part of it. There will be some, obviously tourism, retail, are going to get hit, and hospitality are going to get hit really hard. And I think there is going to be a need to find ways to support that sector. The government are doing a good job, but with the packages that they've, the economic stimulus packages and the support packages, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to have something a lot more focused and a lot more hands-on for that particular sector.
So I've got, thank you for that, Tenby. So I've got Mayor Webber.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. It's a question to Tenby. It may be in your list somewhere, but I would have thought the access to the port conversion to a state highway for Totra Street and Hewlett's Road would have been most probably number one on your list, as it's been ongoing for a long time, and to keep that foremost in the face of central government would have been in our best interest, because it has an impact on the whole of the wider region.
Yeah, well, Gary, look, you know, we are trying to adhere to the rules of shovel ready, but yes, it is. Clearly, the Totra Hull Hewlett's network, and at some stage, all of us have to have a big breath and say, what are we going to do with that area? And this is really around regional cooperation, because it affects not just inbound traffic to the port coming from the north, but also from the east. And so, yes, that is a part of the plan for sure. The reality is it's not shovel ready, and I think in terms of being able to get cracking on you know, major infrastructure projects, those deemed to be transformational, we've given a list of those which we can get cracking on, if not now, certainly in the next 6 months. But the Totra Hull Hewlett's redevelopment is absolutely up there as a critical piece of infrastructure.
Thank you. So I've got Mayor Restra and then Mayor Chadwick.
Thank you again, Chair Leader. Yes, I'm just going back. I kind of feel like what will end up in the region is a lot of competition for the same workforce to start with. And I'm just wanting to come back to clear with us all that there somehow within our region there will be a regional cooperation around redeployment of unemployed people. And I don't know what that might look like. I know that within the Eastern Bay of Plenty, through our EDA, we had created a sort of an employment hub. But I'm just thinking that may be something that might need to be extended to the regional level. And I'm just wondering how everybody is around possibly what your thoughts are on that. Is that something we do need to follow up more on?
If I could respond, Mayor Restra, I think it has got merit, and I understand the role that the EDAs play, but I think from a local government position that we should not underestimate the success of what was used to be known as the apprenticeship regime, whether it was junior apprenticeships or adult apprenticeships, which is actually on-the-job training as opposed to institutional training. Was a great success for the New Zealand economy in the past, and it probably shouldn't be underestimated in terms of what the capability of that industry training people has in the future. But where we can support all the EDAs getting together to have that conversation, but I think at the end of the day, people training on the job by industry, because they've all got some different variabilities in terms of the way they do things, has got a lot of merit, and it's probably hasn't got a lot of focus at the moment unless central government's thinking about it. So
does Ezra play a part in this? Is that in his brief?
I would think so. Yeah. Mayor Chadwick?
Thank you, Chairman Leader. I think we're really focused today on the shovel ready that we're putting forward, and the second wave of discussion will be the workforce readiness. But in that bracket of conversation, in your opening salvo, Chairman Leader, you talked about immigration stopping, but I wouldn't forget, and we experience here as a surge region, those moving out of Auckland. So that is still great. We're a region that people want to come to. And we experience that within New Zealand. And I think that's quite critical, especially underpinning our housing plan. But you wouldn't want to have too many more surging down here with the housing pressures that we've got at the moment, and then the employing of our own people.
That's true, Mayor Chadwick, but I think the displacement of people moving out of Auckland has, to a large degree, been driven by the demand from immigration. So if we see that,
That's right.
if we see that tailing off, then there may well be a consequential effect in terms of the demand for people relocating, because it becomes a price point discussion for a lot of them. So we've got Mr. Gary Mayor Weber.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And just following on from Stevie, I think when you look at the compiled list that central government's going to get, it's oversubscribed. And I think we're really better to wait to see what comes out the back end of it. There is a significant amount of infrastructure going to be required, and it's not going to happen on day one. The biggest limiting factor is going to be the lack of resource. So I think it's a fair question, but it's one we may have to address in about 6 to 8 months when we know the outcome of what's been successful and what are the actual resources required.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Weber. And I think that essentially brings us to the conclusion of all the commentary around it. So I think in the interests of time and brevity, so I think now we should move to the concluding recommendations that we've got in front of us. So could I thank you one and all for the presentations that you've made, the thought and considerations that's gone in behind all those recommendations. So we now need to consider the papers on page 9 of the agenda. So essentially, I presume everybody's got these. I'll just read them to you. So there's essentially only 4. So the first is that the Mayoral Forum notes the local government is collectively working to ensure communities in the Bay of Plenty recover quickly and well from COVID-19. The second is that we note there are a series of papers that have been presented this morning to the Mayoral Forum on the Crayon infrastructure projects that today are to be submitted to the Crayon Infrastructure Partnerships Group. The third is that we note all councils are working with key partners, stakeholders, and we're moving at a pace to progress other recovery responses and updates on this progress. Update on this progress will be presented to the future mayoral forums. And lastly, that we agree to an overarching cover letter from the Bay of Plenty Mayoral Forum to the Crown Infrastructure Partnerships Group. So that's essentially a covering letter that will append to the recommendations that go collectively to the Crown Infrastructure Partnership Group. So those are the 4 recommendations that we've got in front of us. So with that, I will move the adoption of those 4 recommendations. Do we have a
Happy to second, yes.
Thank you, Mayor
Riestra.
Mayor Riestra. Is there any discussion on those? If not, now how are we going to do this? Just before I go there, I see, Gary, you've got your hand up. Mayor Weber?
Not for that. I'd like to comment on the press release at some stage. But I think if we all put our finger up in front of the video, that should be enough for you, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
There you go.
Yeah, that's fine. So all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Raise your finger. Right, all against. Can't see anyone with against, so therefore it's carried. Thank you, everybody. That's much appreciated. So now general discussion. Yeah. So Mr. Weber.
Doug, I'd like to think that in the press release that went out, we mention, as all of the mayors have so far, a sincere thanks to the staff. They've worked their backsides off over this Easter break. They should have all been on public holiday. They've got enough issues, but they have worked way above and beyond. And I think that should be mentioned in the press release so the general public recognise these people have worked hard on their behalf. They've done it professionally and sensibly.
Thank you for those comments. Gary, and they are totally appropriate. And as the administrator, I think the regional council can probably capture those statements in a prepared statements that's already been run out as a draft. We can update that. Mayor Chadwick.
Yes, my only comment was, could we round robin the cover letter so that we all, understand the intent that goes behind the cover letter? And I totally support Gary about staff. At this time in the weekend when ours were working, there was a ridiculous discussion around our staff taking a 20% pay cut, which I found was disingenuous when they were working right through. So I think I agree with you, Gary, that should go there about how important the executive support is to us on helping us make our political decisions. But if we could round robin the cover letter, Mayor Leader, just so we understand what's gone forward to the Minister.
Yeah, no problem, Mayor Chadwick. Mayor Turner, do you have a question?
No, a comment that I just didn't get to make before, but I think is relevant and may even be good to be mentioned, is that, so I know in the Eastern Bay that there's been a number of contractors who have been in contact with people who would have previously been competitors and are working quite collaboratively to ensure that the industry stands up ready for this work. And I just think that to acknowledge the fact that there is some collaboration going on to make, in these circumstances, I think is probably worth recognising.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. Well said. It's testament to what pressure can engender in terms of collaboration or cooperation, but I think it stands to order that if a lot of these projects get across the line, then there will need to be collaboration and cooperation between the contractors, so that the local people aren't displaced, as opposed and outsiders, contractors coming in, because it's the local people should be first and foremost in front of our minds. Okay, thank you, everybody. Mayor Chadwick.
Sorry, one last thought. Minister Jones has asked again and again and again about rail, and it wasn't there because it's not shovel ready, but and it might be in the Eastern Bay, but for us it is actually bursting open a rail proposal at a later stage for Taupo, Rotorua through to Auckland Airport. And I just want to put that on the agenda because the Unisar current alignment is all about getting stuff to port, but also we want to consider at a future date rail.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Chadwick. Miriam Terrace.
Hi, Doug. Just a process question for you. So is the expectation from the mayors and yourself, Doug, that everything will be compiled as a group application with cover letters and the mayoral letter on top to go by close of play today? Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding. So the submissions will be done on the basis that they are autonomous in terms of the sub-region. So you've got the Eastern Bay, which is a collective, you've got Rotorua, you've got Western Bay District Council, and you've got Tauranga and then the Regional Council, but there'll be a recovering letter from the Mayoral Forum, which is the result of this morning's discussion, appended to those independent documents, noting that they've been discussed, all been discussed by the Mayoral Forum. That's my understanding.
So
Mr. Weber?
that's what I'm imagining. Can I confirm that with Fiona, that she's able to compile that on a group basis? Because obviously there's quite a lot of paperwork and forms. We've got the drafts and we're just finalising. As long as that's what everyone's agreeing to by close of play today.
That's my understanding. Mayor Weber, have you got your hand up here?
Yes, Doug, I thought the Regional Council had circulated what they were going to present as the overarching letter already. And I just thought that was going to be at the front and then everybody's stapled in behind with their own letters covering it.
But
That's
it
right.
needs it needs to be slightly updated now with some of the thoughts that we put in from today.
Can we just clarify that, Mayor Restra, because when you say thoughts, are you referring to the press release?
Yes, the press release mentioning the work that's been done over the long weekend by a lot of our manager CEOs.
Yeah, no, we can do that. So, Fiona, have you been listening? You've been listening to this discussion? Where's Fiona gone?
She was there a moment ago. She's on mute at the moment.
Good morning, Mayors and Chair. I think the most practical way forward is to submit the cover letter with all your signatures and just the list, but actually each council to provide their actual submissions, or each part of the region. So there is a complete list with the cover letter, which we can easily do today, and then each council or part of the region does their own letter as well.
That's my understanding.
That means it's just one application for the whole region, though. Is that what you're saying?
Miriam, I think we say that this is endorsed all of the, so the projects at the back of the Mayoral letter have been discussed and considered by the Mayoral Forum, and then separately each council or sub-region will also put through their detailed lists, because they do run to hundreds of pages.
Okay, so we'll do it twice. We'll do it as a group and do it as each individual council.
Yes. Mayor Chadwick.
That was definitely my understanding, as Fiona mentioned it. Yep.
Okay, we're all on the same page there. Okay, well, that essentially brings us to the conclusion of the Mayoral Forum. Thank you for your attendance and deliberations today. Do we have another date for the next one, Fiona, or are we seeing how things play out?
Yes, through you, Chair. We do have another date in June, but you may well consider having a more timely Mayoral Forum prior to that.
Relative to circumstances?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that brings it, the Mayoral Forum meeting to a close. Thank you one and all for attending, and wish us all
Doug.
well, individually and collectively, in terms of, I don't know when the deliberations will be and the notification is what's successful, when it's successful, but no doubt we'll keep you in touch. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of another weeks of lockdown before hopefully we go to a level 3 in either all of or some of the regions.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Blue. I'm good.